just some small technology knowledge with some confidence could lead to new careers, almost as if you were a wizard. And I think that we're actually in that same kind of time period today with artificial intelligence.
You're not there to work out the answer because the AI will give you the answer, but you need to ask questions to figure out whether the answer that you're getting is the right one or complete or accurate.
Almost every industry, they're changing every academic field, and it's happening so rapidly that it's hard to see where this is leading. But we are certain that field will change, that industry will change, and it will be changed by artificial intelligence.
Welcome to another episode of Relearning Work, where we dive into the future of learning and work. In each episode, we bring you conversations with leaders from industry and education to challenge assumptions, propose ideas, and share learnings as we all navigate this world that is being reshaped by agentic AI. Now, whether you're an educator, a student, or a business executive looking to stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape, there's something here for you. I'm your host, David Yip. My guest today is Dr. Ed Clark, educator, technology executive, and student advocate. He is currently Chief Information Officer for the California State University System, the largest university system in the United States, spanning 23 campuses, more than 50,000 staff, and nearly 500,000 students. Earlier this year, CSU and OpenAI partnered to launch the largest deployment of AI in higher education, integrating AI across both its curriculum and operations. Ed's unconventional career journey starts from English literature to technology leadership and becoming an award-winning CIO, leading massive digital transformations. He's passionate about debunking myths around online education, arguing that truly effective online learning requires deep student engagement and not just putting PowerPoints online. It's worth noting that Ed maintains a dual role, leading system-wide education strategy while still actively teaching at CSU's Fullerton campus. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, that's quite a journey from starting with English literature to leading one of the biggest digital transformations with the biggest higher education system in the US.
Yeah, it has been a wild ride for sure, but extremely fun and extremely rewarding. Yes.
Can you share a bit about how you actually got here? What you started off as, and how you got to doing this deal with OpenAI, and what you're seeing now in the next stage.
Okay, well, so you don't mean like tracking my life, my life evolution from English major to CIO, or do you?
Oh, I mean, that would be interesting as well. Please share.
So I probably missed a question, sorry, but very briefly, being an English major, I went to graduate school at the University of Minnesota, and Minnesota had invented this technology. They're known as the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They'd invented a technology known as GopherNet. And so when I got there as a grad student in the English department, the chair said, you know what? We're the only department at the university that doesn't have a Gopher site. Could you put one up for us? Because they noticed I could do technology things. So I put up the Gopher site. GopherNet was something that was out before the web. You may be old enough to remember GopherNet. I don't know.
I do.
That's right. So GopherNet, I put up the Gopher site, was bragging to some friends in DC, Washington, DC. And they said, one of them said, oh yeah, that Gopher thing, it's kind of cool, but this web thing is about to take over. You should go set up a website. And so I did, asked to set up a website, worked to put one up, and it ended up being one of the first websites ever put up at the university. So my whole career went in a different direction. It was a time where just some small technology knowledge with some confidence could lead to new careers, almost as if you were a wizard, right? And I think that we're actually in that same kind of time period today with artificial intelligence. Wizards are going to be here. You're going to be able to do magical things that people are just blown away by. And I think it's always a fun time to be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a very fun time. And these technologies, you're too right. It does seem very magical, but it also sometimes can be quite scary to a lot of people too, because these things can appear quite human in their capabilities. And I ask this to all my guests as well, is how do you get into the right mindset to look at these technologies and look at these opportunities in the right way? And so that you do see them as something that's positive and that we have to embrace, and maybe some assumptions, because I guess assumptions are really key to mindset formation.
I have a two-part answer to that because I do face these questions constantly, and there's sort of a historical perspective where really with the invention of new technologies always has been fear, resistance, and I think if you want to go way back, Plato, with the invention of writing, is worried that in the Phaedrus, I believe is the work, is worried that the invention of writing is going to take away people's power of memory, right? That hey, it's all here. I don't have to remember anything anymore, and uh, and all this knowledge is here, and it'll would like take away from critical thinking because it's just in a book. And so actually very similar to kinds of the concerns we see today. You saw it more recently with the calculator controversies in the 80s, where should we allow students to use calculators or not? There was a fear that if you use a calculator, you wouldn't have any math skills left, right? And then with the internet, there was okay, people could use Wikipedia, they could Google everything. They're going to copy and paste answers and cheat constantly. These things constantly are coming out with every new technology. These concerns, they repeat themselves, and instead what it does do, it kind of ideally it transforms the way we do teaching and learning. So we're going to incorporate this, we're going to incorporate books, we're going to incorporate the internet, we're going to incorporate calculators, and change the way we do teaching and learning so that you still get the skills you need to be successful in whatever aim you're going after. I think the second part, though, which is absolutely 100% true, is that AI is evolving at a much faster rate. It has faster adoption than we've ever seen with any other technology, and it's evolving more quickly than any other technology we've ever seen. So there's that speed of change is very different this time around, right? I think that's true. And then the last thing I'll say is, I have many of our faculty, many of our staff are concerned about the impact on critical thinking, the impact on, the fact that these tools can have bias and they can have misinformation, and they can, and they have even environmental impacts, right? The sustainability impacts, all the energy usage and everything. And what I say to these folks is, yeah, that's great. We need people like you. We need people who are concerned to participate in helping to evolve this technology, so that we can actually have it serve our mission instead of just watching it from the sidelines, right? We need to leverage these tools to serve the mission of higher education.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I think it mirrors a comment that was raised in Australia at one of our higher education conferences earlier this year, where a leader was saying, I think we should, as a sector, we should stop admiring the problem, right? And actually get involved and do something about it. And you have done that in a very big way. There's 500,000 students, but not just students, but also staff, academics at that kind of scale. So can you talk us through, what you're doing with AI at that scale and some of the learnings so far? Because it's still early days in your journey, right?
Yes, it's early days. We presented our AI strategy for approval by our board of trustees in January, and we're halfway through the year now, so we got approval. But our assumptions, getting to your earlier question, the assumptions were these tools are rapidly changing almost every industry. They're changing every academic field, and it's happening so rapidly that it's hard to see what is supply chain management going to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Hard to predict, but we are certain that that field will change, that industry will change, and it will be changed by artificial intelligence. So it's our duty to prepare our students for this future. And right now, quite frankly, higher ed doesn't evolve very rapidly. The pandemic was one thing that made us all go online, but really what we did is repeat what we did in the classroom via Zoom, right? And so We didn't really evolve. We did an emergency procedure to be successful through that. This one's going to require us to evolve so that we can prepare our students for an uncertain future, where, again, all fields, industries are changing rapidly. And so, how do we do that? Well, at the bare minimum, we need to provide access to these tools to all of our students, to all of our faculty, to all our staff, so we can learn about them, learn how to leverage them, learn what their problems and opportunities are, and engage with them more adequately. What we were seeing before we launched our strategy is that some of our 23 universities were going out and buying their own tools and signing their own contracts, while others couldn't afford. They're very expensive tools, couldn't afford to adopt them. So we couldn't just watch our own system have haves and have nots. So we said, look, we're going to establish a baseline of access for all of our community.
Hmm.
That was one aspect of our strategy. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because the strategy involves multiple stakeholders, right? And how did you get everyone aligned and on board and moving forward, together?
Yes. Well, so you get to the governance part. So a year before, January of 2023, right? Or January 2024. I apologize. We had started our governance group, and we brought in our faculty, our students, our administrators, our staff to talk about what should we do about artificial intelligence in terms of enhanced productivity, in terms of teaching and learning, in terms of intellectual property, in terms of all the legal issues that might arise from it. And they got together over that spring semester of that year and created a report which led to the formation of our strategy. So the answer is, we honored our governance process, brought in every stakeholder group that we have in the CSU to talk about what are we going to do and how are we going to tackle this together. And that led to a strategy that deals with everything from access to tools and training, to workforce development, to leveraging tools for better system efficiency and effectiveness. So,
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things about AI adoption, I guess, is the upskilling that's required, and of people, not just the students and the academic staff, but the professional staff too, to learn how to use and to experiment. You mentioned it's very hard to predict, and if at all possible, what's going to be happening and how these industries or processes or how you do work is going to change. And so, what better way to do it than just to experiment and experiment. Find out for yourself, find out all of us together, and then let all of us decide where the opportunities are. And are there some initial findings or things that you've noticed through your experimentation, or your staff have picked up, or your students, that you think is particularly interesting? Whether, expectations that it's going to move things forward, or things that's working better than you thought, or things that are working not as good as you thought, that were unexpected.
well, I think some of these things, especially for your listeners, will be less surprising, but they're important to call out just the same. One of the tensions that we ran into, especially as the first concern that most of our academic staff, our faculty, were worried about was academic integrity. Students are going to use this to cheat. They're turning in papers written by ChatGPT. How do I catch them? That was kind of like the first order of
Mm.
business, right, for our
Yeah.
academic. And then but by bringing this conversation together with students and faculty and workforce representatives and so on, students, we're saying, you know what, we're pretty sure that when we graduate, we're going to need to know how to use these tools. But our faculty are saying, don't ever use these tools, some of their faculty, right? And so we're getting that message. And then having the employers also back up the students and say, oh, yeah, we're expecting these. If you're going to come in and work for us, we're expecting you to know how to use these tools. So that's sort of like that idea, in the same way, bringing the parties together so they could hear these things kind of creates this aha moment where we can hopefully get past the stances we had to start thinking about, well, what's best for our community, for our students and their outcomes, right? So that was that's one of the things that we were able to do. So we have a survey that was developed at San Diego State University that's now been rolled out to many other universities, including outside of our California State University system. But it kind of measures the perceptions of AI, and over 70% of our students are certain that these AI skills will be required for them to gain valuable employment moving forward.
And what specifically are these AI skills?
Yes. Well, that's a that so that it does not actually, the survey itself just like, do you feel like you will need to know how to use AI tools, right? When you and the perception is, yeah, absolutely. And then so the skills question that you're asking is an interesting one, because our employers are saying, yeah, they got to have AI skills. That's not good enough, and that's why we created this AI, a workforce acceleration board. The idea was like, we're going to create this thing to serve the workforce, this conversation, this process. And one of the issues is, okay, what skills do you need, employers, from our students when they graduate? If we want you to hire them, in fact, that's part of our mission as a Cal State University. We develop the workforce for California and beyond. What are those skills they're going to need? Now, what has been interesting about our conversations, again, this strategy launched in January, so we've had 2 meetings of the AI Workforce Acceleration Board so far. A lot of the skills that come up are not technology related at all. They're a lot about the durable skills, right? Like flexibility, adaptability, creativity, confidence, those kind of leadership, right? Collaboration. In fact, when we talk about, one of the questions we asked the employers was, hey, what are your favorite interview questions? And their favorite interview questions were almost never about the technology or about the field that the student or the degree the student had earned, but more about ways to determine whether they were collaborative, whether they were nice people to work with, right? Those kinds of
Yeah,
things. And
yeah,
so that was kind of that's an aha moment too, because higher ed has not been very good at. We're good at saying you're a mechanical engineer. Here's your degree. How do we
yeah,
certify those other things, those durable skills? You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, those durable skills they're I hear them quite a lot. All the same terms come up: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, curiosity.
Yeah.
As in terms of a skill that you can actually develop and hone.
Lifelong learner. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
lifelong learner, right?
Yeah.
I think that's particularly going to be more important with these AI tools, because you're constantly asking questions. You're not there to work out the answer because the AI will give you the answer, but you need to ask questions to figure out whether the answer that you're getting is the right one, or complete, or accurate, and it comes from asking questions. And a lot of these skills that need to be developed. And one of the things about these skills is that a lot of them you'll pick up in your university journey. But do you think it's intentional enough in the current university journey, where it's explicit enough that the undergrads actually realize that these are skills being imparted on them? Or it might feel sometimes, that some might pick it up, some might not pick it up. The emphasis on the exam, it's on,
Right.
do you know how to use this formula? Do you know how to recall this fact? But how do you actually make sure the students actually are aware and explicitly know these are actually the skills the university is trying to impart on them?
I think universities need to do a better job of reinforcing that in the classroom and beyond. I will say that, I teach information systems at Cal State Fullerton, as you mentioned, and many the students, I'm teaching students who are junior level. They're 1 year away from graduating
Yeah.
usually,
Yeah.
and they many of them are terrified about their job prospects. They're saying, haven't been able to get an internship yet. I really need to get one of those. And some of them are telling me they've put out hundreds and hundreds of applications and got nothing in return, right? No
Yeah.
responses.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that one of the things, as a CIO, I've brought other employers in the room, other CIOs and so forth, even at the beginning of the semester, to talk about, what is your career journey going to look like, and what sorts of things are they looking for, so I can expose them to the fact that, hey, you getting an A in this course, yeah, that's good. I'm glad, and you do need to apply yourself and learn what I'm trying to teach you. But in many ways, the more important things are the things you talk about. How do you gain these skills that right now you only passively are some students already come in and they're very confident and they're great communicators and so forth. Others are very shy and they're just focused on getting the A. And honestly, those students are probably going to suffer the worst under this sort of new economy that's emerging. They're going to need to step out of their comfort zones, focus beyond getting the A and developing these skill sets and reaching out, learning how to network, collaborate, show people why they should be employed.
Hmm. Yeah, because I find a lot of these soft skills or durable skills, communications, for example, the assessments, they don't quite capture a lot of those durable skills and assessing those, right? Yeah, maybe in postgraduate, there's more of that. Maybe some business courses or subjects that's specifically about communications or about collaboration. But at the undergrad, if you're doing an engineering course or if you're doing a science course, do you feel that there's enough emphasis to actually assess so that the students know that this A, in order to get an A, I need to demonstrate communication. I need to demonstrate confidence, right?
I think that you hit on it's interesting because this is when I have I'll pick on business schools a little bit. I don't know how business schools are in Australia, but I've seen friends and others going through business school and say, oh my gosh, this question is so hard, and then I would say, have you ever Googled that question? And then if you Google it, you can find not only that question, but all the other questions because they keep reusing the same questions over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's so silly
Now,
because
now you can just ask ChatGPT.
right. And
Yeah.
so I think what's interesting about graduate school, or if you're going to get a doctorate, in the end you have to do this oral examination. You have to come in. You've already read everything. You know, you don't have any way to sort of cheat your way through it. You're going to be questioned and grilled by your peers,
Mm,
sometimes very harshly, about your knowledge and like how your dissertation addresses this and that and these other kinds of tough issues. And you prove that you know what you're talking about in that moment. And I think that it's very old fashioned, but it's also something that we can do very simply today. I mean, I have my students at the end of the semester, they present their group project. They have a PowerPoint, but then they have to demonstrate that they know what they're talking about. And you can ask, in fact, I asked guests to come in and we ask the hard questions and we say, well, why would that approach work? I mean, have you ever considered this piece of it? And then have to answer in the moment. Those are things where not only are you bringing up their presentation skills, right? That's
mm,
you better be ready because you're going to be presenting this. They're not able to use Chat GPT in the moment, at least not yet, right?
mm.
and
Yeah,
then finally, by doing that, they're doing something that would be very similar to what they might see at an employer too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Because so you really, what you're describing there sounds like you're bringing in, tertiary in postgrad level earlier into their journey, taking much later, more sophisticated ways of learning and teaching much earlier into the bachelor's, into undergrad, and using that, you're lifting the expectation almost because this is a whole this AI transformation going on. All those things that you'll learn in your master's or your PhD, we're going to start to use some of those same processes and same curriculum in your undergrad.
and to your point, I'm not I mean, many other folks will do that. I think the lesson learned from it though is it does get to these durable skills that we want, right? That our
Mm,
employers want.
mm,
But secondly, all these academics that were worried about cheating, there are ways to assess that can pretty much guarantee that there wasn't cheating. Because if if they can go and use ChatGPT and then gather all that knowledge and then do a great presentation and answer all my questions in the class, and I would argue that they did exactly what they should have done. Right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
you
yeah,
learn from that and you can
yeah.
deliver in this way, then more power to you, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. And in addition to the learning piece in this whole AI world, there's an increasing focus on employability and the outcomes. We talk about student success a lot. What do you think student success actually means in this whole AI world? How's it evolving?
Well, so I think student success can be defined in so many different ways, right? There's the selfish university view when I call it selfish, is we want them to graduate. We want them to graduate in 4 years. and ideally have a job that's related to their degree. The reason why I call it selfish is that raises our ranking, that raises our reputation. Okay, yeah, that's what we want. Students for sure want, and when you ask them what do they want, they mostly want to get good jobs, right? That's why they came through higher ed. Some of them want to go to grad school, and that's great. Yeah, if I go to grad school, I want to be able to get into a good grad school, and become a professor and so forth. But it's all related to their employment prospects after graduation. And when you say in this age of AI, as fields change, as businesses change, as industries change, I think that sort of like the half life of skills is aging so rapidly. Our students need to be well prepared for whatever comes next, right? And I think that's why these durable skills, I this student panel that we did with the employers and the faculty in the room, one of them was a mechanical engineer major, was just graduating and had just done an internship with NASA. So obviously pretty good, and
Yeah.
NASA mechanical. And he said, one of the questions was, what was your first experience of using, AI, Chat GPT, or another thing? He said, well, we were just graduating, and we had learned how to make all these very, very durable valves that could withstand intense heat and pressure and so forth like that. And so, and then you render them in these 3D modeling applications and so forth, and then these CAD applications. And then, we said, okay. And then we stuck it in ChatGPT and it put it out in 30 seconds. It was like, here's this valve and it can handle this. And he said, and our reaction was like, man, we're not going to have jobs, right? And like, it was
Yeah.
a scary thing for him. And of course, I mean, obviously this student had a lot more going for him than that. I think the issue is, yes, how you build those tools is going to change. It's going to be accelerated by AI. We're still going to have people have to test those things, validate the answers that are getting are accurate, and the same thing goes for coding, by the way, too. Something that I'm much more familiar with. If you do the vibe coding thing, you might get something that works out of the box, or 50% works. You have to know enough to fix it the rest of the way. And by the way, do you know if it has security vulnerabilities?
Mm,
If
mm,
you don't,
mm.
I mean, you could have just unleashed something out in the world that is going to be the next terrible thing, right? And I think that whole notion that you're going to be, I think that's one of the notions that's out there, is that it's going to replace employment, right? And I think it will change employment, but it's not going to replace employment. We're going to need experts to work with these tools and understand their opportunities, their shortcomings, and constantly refine that over time as it evolves, right? So.
Yeah, yeah. I get asked that question a bit as well. Oh, that won't actually replace jobs because the numbers start to show that, particularly entry level jobs. And one thing that I've observed, particularly using it a lot myself, and you used the vibe coding example, that's a great one. Oh, we don't need coding anymore. We don't need software engineers because these things will do it for us. But I think from using it and understanding how these things work, I think you need more expertise, not less. I think you need more humans, not less, because these things will provide you whatever you ask. Right?
Yeah,
So someone has to ask these questions, and there's a
right.
lot of questions to ask. And you need to make a lot of these different tools integrate and work together to solve a problem. And these are all problems that are human problems. Yeah, so there in itself, opens up a whole plethora of new types of work. As long as we, I guess, take the blinkers off, take our assumptions away that we've used in the past, and open it up to, I guess, a new way of looking at a new mindset. I was talking to someone else before about, using these tools, and they do research and publications, and they have to manage the references, and it's a very tedious process. And bang, ChatGPT can actually produce it in, a few seconds, a minute or two. Fantastic, but you still have to use ChatGPT, right? To do that.
Right,
It's still
right.
it's still something that you have to do. You can't just leave it to it won't do it by itself. So some human still has to prompt it, still has to ask questions, still has to make sure to check it, to weave it together, to put it in context. That's a messy problem that requires a human.
It is, yeah. I believe our AI strategy is called the AI empowered CSU because we believe that humans in the middle is always going to be part of the future, in education and beyond. And I'll say, one of the interesting things about what you're talking about is, Gartner has this 2x2 framework. I'm sure you're familiar with Gartner, right? Maybe someone has already talked to you about it, but that when they talk about the main opportunities, the best opportunities for AI, it's where low experience, right, and low experience and low complexity. So I'm in a call center, a call comes in, the AI can say, okay, here's a script to go through. Have you done this? Have you done this? Say this, 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 and this. That kind of job, AI can really do a good job of helping that human be more effective at their work. The other area of best usage is in high experience and high complexity. And so if you're a partner in a law firm or something like that, you can actually like, okay, it's going to give you all these suggestions about your case, but you have enough experience to say, yeah, this part is totally inaccurate. I'm going to reject that, but this part I can use, right? And so that whole idea that high experience and high complexity, we still need to develop humans that can get to this high experience, high complexity thing so that they can use these tools. The example in the middle there, where if you have low experience as a lawyer, but a high complexity job, and it gives you a bunch of things, we've already seen it in the US legal system. Inexperienced lawyer brought these cases into court. Turns out the cases were completely fabricated, right? And so
Yeah.
that's an example of like, yeah, that's not, if you don't have the experience to know what you're getting is not accurate, you can't use it very well, right? So
Mm, mm,
humans in the
mm.
middle
Yeah.
still very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about the experiences that you've had, seeing how students actually use these things and then translating those and applying it. Because you talked about experience. How do you actually, because the more you apply these tools, the more experience that you get. And it seems to me that this whole experience opportunity, the experience gap is widening, right? How have you seen that sort of play out? What are some early signals, and where do you think it's going to head?
Well, one of the early signals that is most concerning, and this is employment signals, right, is that the entry level jobs are disappearing. I am of the opinion, and I'm just talking very broadly here. I'm of the opinion that firms are experimenting. They're saying, and we've already seen some of them backing away from. They're experimenting. Hey, you know what? I can automate all of this. I'll just use AI for the whole thing. And what they're learning is, no, actually, we're going to rehire the humans. In fact, I believe there was a startup in where, I don't remember
Yeah,
where it was. You probably know one I'm
I
talking about.
think Kleiner, right?
Yes, that's right, right, right. So they were going
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
AI everything, and now we're going to inject humans back into this, right? Because
yeah,
it didn't work
yeah,
as well as we thought. So I worry that right now these entry level jobs are disappearing. I think they will come back when people realize that even 80% accuracy is not very good, right? For a lot of those kinds of jobs, you're going to need humans to kind of get them the rest of the way. That's one thing. The other thing that I'm really enthusiastic about, though, when I talked about earlier about, this is a time of wizardry, a time of magic. Our students at Cal Poly SLO, that's one of our campuses, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, they were focused on a pain point, which was, they have these incredible schedules. They have a part-time job. They have an academic schedule. They have dates, they have their social lives, all these other things, and they decided to create their own bot that can handle a scheduling, develop an academic schedule for them that handles all the other parts of their lives, and optimize their own schedules using AI. They built this bot on their own, and of
hmm
course, as administrators, there are tools on the market we'd rather they use and all that. But the fact that these students were creative, decided to try to address their own pain points by creating their own bot, that speaks well to me of the potential for their future and the future of this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly amazed by the skills that students have, and a lot of times talk to employers about hiring interns or entry level, the sentiment I'm getting is that, oh, you've got to train them, or they don't have any skills. But I find that often quite opposite. A lot of students, if you give them the opportunity, they will surprise you. Part of the problem I find as well is that a lot of students, they don't even realize the skills they already have are actually quite valuable, right? So when you ask them, they'll say, oh, I don't have these skills, whatever. But when you give them a problem to solve, they'll solve it for you because they didn't realize what those skills were called, right? That they already have, and they'll deliver some amazing outcomes. And you just highlighted a good example. They'll build these bots because to solve a problem and go out and find tools to do it. We need a lot of that in companies. We need a lot of people who can look at old problems through fresh eyes and
Right,
new
right.
ways of thinking.
They haven't been told that it's they haven't run into that, oh, this problem can't be solved yet, so they just go out and solve it, right? And that sort of fresh eyes where they don't know if it's a hard problem, they just want to solve it and they go out and just do it. That's why we want this pipeline of new talent, and our students, as you say, are the source of that.
Yeah. I think a beautiful combination would be someone with a lot of experience, lived experience, your professional experience, paired up with highly skilled, curious, creative, motivated young learners who can come in and solve these problems. And you get guidance along the way from the experience, and then use these tools, and there's a plethora of them, to apply truly innovative ways and find innovative use cases, solutions, and everything else.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, we are wrapping up, and this is an education podcast, and I love hearing stories about how teachers have impacted everyone's careers and lives. And I want to ask you, Ed, you're an educator yourself now, but who has been an educator, a teacher in your career that has been highly impactful, that's resulted in your current position now, building this transformation for the largest education system in the US?
There's so many. First of all, my whole career has been built on so many mentors and people that have helped me along the way, and I'm grateful to all of them. I will pick someone very early on. I was English as a second language. Thai was my first language, actually. And I remember a high school English teacher, Miss Welburn, and I really loved literature. Obviously, I became a literature major and would read all these books. But I was probably a B student at the time, and so there was a local medical office, a pathology lab, that was looking for high potential students to come and do a high school internship at the pathology lab. And Miss Welburn suggested one other person and myself, and said, yeah, Ed would be great at this. And I had no idea why she suggested me, because I didn't even see that in myself, right? But going out and suddenly working at this pathology lab and working with medical specimens and working with doctors, and which, as you can imagine, requires confidence and some an ability to speak, and working with all it really changed my life in a way that I don't know how it would have gone otherwise. But she saw something in me I didn't see in myself, so I really always appreciated Miss Welburn. I hope all of you have your Miss Welburn out there.
Fantastic. I think that definitely, I think, would resonate with a lot of people. Having teachers who very early on really shape our thinking, our outlook, and point out things that we would not have considered, and to set us in a new direction. So thank you for sharing that story, Ed. The last segment is more of a fun one. It's one I call Plugs. And it's where you can plug an organization, a thing, a person, an initiative, anything that you think it's worthwhile for our listeners to go and check out and find out more about.
One of the things that I would like to plug is there is a shortage of K-12 teachers in the United States, and that shortage is getting more dire every year. And so I'd like to plug the National Center for Teacher Residencies. I serve on their board, and the CEO is Kathleen Campbell. But they're doing such an amazing mission, which is they're trying to get the next generation of teachers to come in, learn how to teach in this residency model, so that we can make more effective K-12 teaching and learning outcomes across the country. So that's what I'd like to plug.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ed. And for myself, of course, I'll plug this show. So for all of you listeners out there, please like and subscribe, and we'll bring you, new episodes every couple of weeks with innovative thinkers, trailblazers, and leaders in our sector. And that's it for our show this fortnight. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, David.